happened when I was very young, something I didn't discover through hypnosis that happened to my mother and I as we were driving to my ballet class. And we saw a UFO out our window, and it came down lower and lower until it was right above a telephone pole. And our car stalled, and there were about 12 other cars stalled around us. And white beams of light were shooting out from the craft, and one hit me in the face, and I was paralyzed. It came through the roof of the car. It didn't come through the window. And I remember another person next to us had a white beam of light in his face. My mother asked him if he thought it was a UFO, and he said he thought it was. And I saw a tall, thin man, I thought, walking in between our cars, and when he reached our car, my mother went to sleep. And then 3 small beings came and took me out of the car and floated me into the craft.
Okay, 3 small beings and what did they look like?
They had large heads and big black eyes, and it was very fuzzy. I was almost passed out at that time.
And they floated you up onto the spacecraft, and then what happened?
They put me onto a table, and they showed me a long needle, and they put the edge of the needle into my navel. And then they floated me back down to my car and shut the door on my back, and my mother woke up, and we continued on to my ballet class. And when we got there, my class was nearly over. I had missed an hour of it. And my mother called the FAA to report the craft, and other people had called also, and including a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force.
All right. Now, you had another incident happen to you?
Well, 3 months later, they came back, and they took me from my room. Actually, I walked out into the front yard. My parents were standing out in the front yard also, and took me aboard the craft and removed something that looked like a placenta attached to an umbilical cord.
From your body?
Yes.
Now, what are you saying happened to you?
Well, I can only speculate that they must have put something in me to, I think they
You feel you were artificially
me.
inseminated? You
Yes.
feel you were impregnated by them?
Yes.
And they were harvesting...
As crazy as it sounds.
Well, a lot of things sound crazy. A lot of things are inexplicable. Doesn't mean they don't happen. But you're saying you feel that you were somehow impregnated and they were taking the child?
Yes. Well, as 3 months into the pregnancy.
All right. Now, do you tell people this story? Do you share this story with people?
I do share the story with people. I think it's a very important thing to share. Also, I know that it happens to so many people, and if I had thought that I was alone in this, it would have been very difficult. And I am still searching to this day for other people who were there in the intersection with me, and possibly the lieutenant colonel who saw what I saw.
Okay, but are you generally greeted with skepticism from people? Do people...
Yes, but it's surprising how many people do believe this, because...
Yeah, I mean, I talked to the audience during the break, and how many of you in the audience believe these stories? A lot of you do.
And
yeah.
I'm not trying to convince anyone that it's
No,
true.
we understand.
Yes.
But you have to understand also that according to a Roper poll, I think nearly 4 million Americans say that they've had a similar experience to you folks. So, I mean, you're not talking about a small number of people. How has this changed your life? I would assume that it has.
Well, I think about it every night when I go to sleep, because recently I became engaged and I live with my fiancé, and now they're visiting us together, and he woke with an incision scar on his back about 2 inches long. So I know it's still happening, and it concerns me about having my own children, but through help of friends and people I know, I'm getting through it.
Cindy, I didn't ask you about the physical evidence that you claim to have sustained from one of these abductions. What did they do to you?
Well, the first abduction I remembered without regression hypnosis. Also, I was taken aboard a craft, and they showed me a small BB, and they told me they were going to put it in my nose because they had 2 tubes going from my nose to my feet, and that it would not hurt. But they took an instrument and put the BB on the end of it and punctured the soft palate of my mouth. And it hurt very badly, and blood spurted onto my gown that they had given me, and I still have those puncture wounds in my mouth.
Which have never been explained by a doctor?
He asked me what I put up there, because it has scar tissue around it, so it was obviously done after birth.
Okay.
I've had people come to me saying they want to be told this is a dream, a fantasy. Even I had a man that came to me just last week and said, Doctor, I'm coming to you because I want you to tell me that I'm crazy. I don't want to believe that these experiences are real. The implications for this person's worldview are so staggering. But as Freud once said, theory doesn't prevent facts from showing up.
Okay, let me just ask you about the basic technique, though, that has brought these stories to the fore, and that is this regression hypnosis.
May I say something about that? I think people think that you are put under hypnosis and you're very relaxed, and you ask these questions, what happened? You say, oh, I was taken aboard a spacecraft and this happened. But I know, Michael and I both work with Bud Hopkins. It's not like that at all. When you get to that moment that you maybe have some missing time, a block of missing time, getting through that is the most traumatic thing. I almost threw up all over him.
It's nonsense to attribute this to the hypnosis itself. Increasingly, I'm seeing people who remember a good deal of the story before hypnosis. They remember being taken on to the spacecraft. They remember the beings. But the experience is so disturbing that the mind puts it down and puts it out of mind, and anything we can use to help people relax and go inward and bring back the experience can help bring it forward. But to say that because they're filling out the experience with hypnosis, that therefore the hypnosis generates it, is not right.
When I was 6 years old, I hadn't seen anything about this, and the last thing I wanted to really believe is that this happened. Actually, the last thing I would want to believe is that I'm crazy, so I guess it's better that it happened.
Yvonne Smith heads an abduction support group where people can share their experiences and discuss their feelings.
I was 6 years old, and I lived in Georgia, near Macon, Georgia, and I just remember it was in the middle of the night, and I woke up, and I was staring at the side of the head of the being, and I started to panic, and a couple of the beings in the craft subdued me somehow, and they had a very large instrument that came over my head, and they showed me a little BB looking thing, and they told me they were going to put it up my nose. But then this instrument came over my head and punctured the soft palate of my mouth, and it hurt very bad. And the next thing I knew, I was being placed back in my bedroom.
I'm finding in my cases many chilling similarities. The person is taken against their will, taken into a craft of some kind, put on a table. The women begin to experience the gynecological examinations done by the aliens on them. They feel very violated.
I remember they numbed me from the waist down, and they took something that looked like an umbilical cord attached to placenta, and they levitated it into some kind of chamber.
Later abduction scenarios, she is actually shown a baby. Now, this baby is not like a human baby that, as we know it, it's a cross between an alien and a human.
It's the central question of UFO research today. Why are they manufacturing these offspring, these babies? If we knew the answer to that, I think we would have a large part of the UFO mystery finally in hand.
It was October 1973, and Cynthia Vodovoz, then age 12, was being driven by her mother to her ballet class. And as Cynthia says in her own words, I noticed an object. It was big and round and bright green and had a yellow ring around it. It was coming over the trees. It stayed with us. Mind you, they're on the highway now. There's other cars around them. They had just passed Gardendale when this object began to descend in front of them. And Cynthia's mother asked, is it going to land? Well, it looked like it was. And at this point, their car actually stalled, and several other cars around them stopped. So there were a lot of witnesses to this incident. And as Cynthia says, in her own words, The object kept coming down and seemed to stop near the wires. It seemed bigger than a plane. My mother rolled down the window, which really upset me. I thought I was going to run. In the car next to me was a man whose face was lit up. He was leaning towards us. Cynthia's mom actually asked the other driver, "Do you think it's a UFO?" And the man replied, "I guess so." And suddenly a bright light filled their car, Cynthia and her mother. And at this point, Cynthia felt a strange sort of paralyzing heaviness. And as she says, in her own words, "The next thing I remember, I was sitting in the car seat, but my feet were in Mother's lap, and the car door slammed on my back, and it woke me up. My mother seemed to wake up. She was trying to start the car." At this point, the UFO was gone. They continued the drive to the ballet class, only to realize that they were quite late, 40 minutes late, and in fact, the class was ending. So they didn't know quite what to make of this at the time. It remained a mystery for many years. Cynthia grew up. She pursued a dancing career, but as she says, "For many years, I didn't know what had happened, only that I had been troubled by something." But after doing some research, she realized that this experience was a typical missing time UFO encounter. She knew what that meant. There was more to this than she remembered. And she actually met with researcher Bud Hopkins, who hypnotized her. And no surprise, an onboard UFO encounter emerged. Under hypnosis, she remembered being taken back to the scene on the highway. And while she was under hypnosis, she remembers thinking that first, could this be a car accident? Because there were cars stopped all around them on the highway. But it wasn't an accident. As Cynthia says, the people ahead were screaming and putting arms out the window, and this thin thing was coming. And as he passed the car, the people were subdued. As he got to our car, Mother rested her head on the door. Then 3 small beings, whitish looking, came to my door and opened it. I tried to put my fingers in the air conditioning vents to hold on, but the vents broke. So at this point, Cynthia was floated out of the car with the beings and into a craft. She found herself in a white room. She was laid out on a table next to another table with another girl on it. And as Cynthia says, she had kind of sandy, curly hair, and she was in the same predicament as me. They were walking around the table doing an examination. I remember they placed a needle in my navel. That's all she really recalls, was being physically examined. Afterward, she found herself being placed in what looked like a kind of transparent globe and floated back into the car. So this affected her very much for the rest of her life. As she says, "I think about it every night when I go to sleep." And she got married, and her husband started having experiences. As she says, they're visiting us together. He woke up with an incision mark 2 inches long on his back, so I know it's still happening. And she also remembers being taken as a very young girl. She recalled this without regressive hypnosis. She recalled being taken on board a craft. They showed her a small BB-like object and told her that they were going to place it in her nose. It actually did cause some pain, and she went to the doctor later, and he verified that there apparently was something, a scar at the roof of her mouth, where she remembers this being placed in her body. It's definitely an interesting case, and kudos to Cynthia for going public with it.